If you thought classical music was just about old composers like Beethoven, Mozart, and Bach, well, think again. Classical music didn't just stop there. It evolved and changed through time, and we're going to look at how the modern era shaped the music we hear today. So grab your headphones and let's go. The modern era of classical music starts around the 19th century and goes all the way to today. Now that's a pretty long time, right? But what makes this era different from the ones before it? The composers in the modern era weren't happy just following the rules. They wanted to break out of the old traditions and experiment with new ideas. They were influenced by everything happening around them: the Industrial Revolution, new technologies, new philosophies, and even wars. All of this shaped the music they created. Here's a visual example of what I'm talking about. These pictures, called the White Paintings, are housed in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. You might be wondering, how is this art? After all, it's just a blank canvas. I guess that's why they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that goes the same with music. Modern composer John Cage was very famous for a similar idea in a piece of music he composed, but we'll talk more about that later. So what exactly makes modern classical music modern? Let's look at some key characteristics that set it apart. You will find that composers use the elements of music to drastically change the way music is performed today. First off, they experimented with harmony and tonality. You are probably already familiar with major and minor scales. They are the most common scales used in music. Well, composers in the modern era weren't always sticking to those. They started using something called atonality, which means that the music doesn't have a clear home tone or key. It's like a musical free-for-all. If you thought classical music was all about nice, smooth, predictable rhythms, think again, because modern classical composers love to play with rhythms, sometimes creating super unpredictable beats, polyrhythms, ever-changing time signatures, and even adding silence when you least expected it. Then we have the use of extended techniques. This means using instruments in unusual ways. For example, having a pianist hit the strings inside the piano instead of playing the keys, or using an instrument like the cello to not only pluck the strings instead of bowing, but use percussive effects by slapping the wood to create rhythmic sounds. It's all about getting different kinds of sounds. The piano guys have used these techniques in their music. I have included a link to some of their videos in the description box below. Another cool feature of modern classical music is electronics and technology. Many modern composers started mixing live music and electronic sounds. Some even used recorded sounds and manipulated them to create brand new musical textures. Now let's talk about some of the great composers who helped shape the modern era. The first is Igor Stravinsky. He was known as one of the most influential composers of the 20th century. His music was loud, bold, and unpredictable. He wrote in many styles, but his ballets were very famous, including the one that we're listening to right now. Then there's John Cage, one of the craziest composers you'll ever come across. His most famous piece is called 4 minutes and 33 seconds, where the performer doesn't play a single note. That's right, he sits in silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Sounds strange, right? But it's meant to make you listen to the sounds around you. In other words, we are the music. The composer Philip Glass brought minimalism to the forefront. His songs like Metamorphosis and Glassworks could be described as music with repetitive structures that would build over time. He was regarded as one of the most influential composers of the late 20th century. And let's not forget Arnold Schoenberg. He is known for creating 12-tone serialism. This method used the entire chromatic scale in a systematic way to create some pretty crazy music. I wish I had more time to describe it, but you could check that out in my next video. So where does modern classical music fit in the world today? Well, many contemporary composers are still using these techniques, but they are also blending classical music with other genres like jazz, rock, and even pop. Well, there you have it. The modern era of classical music is all about experimentation, breaking the rules, and pushing the boundaries. From complex rhythms to new sounds and technology, composers have been taking music places it's never been before. If you ever listen to a piece of modern classical music and think, what's going on in here? Now you know it's just part of the journey. Thanks for tuning in today, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into modern classical music, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, or check out these videos. This one will teach you how to compose music like Schoenberg, and this one is a music history playlist where you can learn even more about music history. See you next time!